tests, and today we're going to talk about unit testing. Just a second, I'm gonna share my screen. The very first question I would like to ask, why would we need unit testing in general in our project? Maybe someone has any idea? Feel free to write if you have. Okay, so this is a pretty interesting question because when we write unit tests, we are spending our very expensive developer time. Switch functions, you can check yes, it helps us to change our code base with less potential bugs. It's what it does. Yes, it is. Okay, that's great, guys. Thank you for your answers. As I said, developers' times are very expensive, and we have QA engineers for testing and stuff. So we might want to spend our time for something more interesting than writing unit tests. But unfortunately, sometimes the absence of unit testing might be something very expensive for software cost in general. For instance, I would like to show you a little video. It was happening pretty long time ago. European's newest unmanned satellite launching rocket, they are reused software from the predecessor of this rocket, and they didn't test the compatibility of those systems, and pretty simple not hidden mistake happened, and all this constructions exploded not so long time after they launched it. So let me so as you can see, from at the beginning everything was great, and then the rocket exploded right in the sky. It's a pretty common scenario when something wasn't tested, or maybe some units was not in centimeters but inches, and when developers haven't time to test the compatibility, not compatibility, just units, or maybe not units. It's not about unit testing, and also about functional testing when we trying to test compatibility of different systems of our software together. So it was a very expensive mistake. It cost overall about $8 billion for the government after this rocket exploded. So goals of unit testing. At the first place, to make sure and show the developers and customers that everything we have implemented as the customer asked us are working exactly the way it's supposed to work. And also it helps prevent software bugs. So also I would like to talk about the benefits of unit testing. So at the very beginning, it makes the process agile. In the process of software development, you need to add more and more features. Sometimes the building of software can take a lot of time, so sometimes you might need to make changes to the old design and code bases as it was developed some time ago. So if the code are covered with unit testing, it helps us to make the process of refactoring or implementing new functionality on the old code base less risky and costly. And also, unit testing helps us to make process of introducing changes to the old code more robust. Also, unit tests helps us to reduce cost of development overall, because the bugs that could be found early in the development phase are usually more easier to fix. The latter bug was found in development. It's because becomes more and more costly to fix and takes more time to do it. And you might don't really know even where the issue is, because so many things have changed, and if there was no unit test, it might be difficult to find the exact problem. Also, when we again referring to the old code bases, when we're trying to refactor our code, sometimes it happens. Unit test allows the developers to refactor code or upgrade system libraries at a later date and make sure the module still works correctly. Unit tests help uh, maintaining and changing the code. And also design. When we have a unit test in mind, sometimes it helps us to write in the code more testable and accordingly more better constructed. And this not only keeps you focus, you know that your code should be covered with tests, or if you using test-driven development, you write tests before you write any code. Guys, if you have any questions, TDD is thinking. Yes, yes. Okay, so that also for me, it's one of the most important points that is the documentation. So tests can play kind of a role of documentation, because when developers look into the code and try to find out the functionality is provided by a unit and how to maybe change, if they need to change it, or understand what exactly it does, unit tests might really help in this situation. It's my very often junior developers that are just starting on the project, or not exactly junior developers, they are all really often get tasks as writing unit tests to help them to start with the project easily and do not break anything. So also, again, bugs, it prevents bugs and helps us to find software bugs earlier in the development stage. Sorry, guys. So also, unit tests might help us as developers be less overwhelmed, because we are always changing something, adding new features, something might break. It might be difficult to find out exactly where something happened. So next point I would like to talk about today, it's types of testing. So there are unit tests when we testing some small pieces of code that are can function by themselves. For instance, it may be a function or a class, or maybe component if someone already used React or maybe Angular. So I want to make an example, as if you would test a calculator. If we want to test the plus sum function by its own self, for instance, we want to be sure that if we pass to this function 2 and 2, it returns 4, and the function works correctly when we need to add some numbers. What should we test with unit tests? Small functions and maybe classes or component. What should not be tested as other frameworks and libraries. Something might change. It will break unit tests, and it's not a subject for unit testing. Databases, maybe some code like calls to the server, we won't test it with unit tests because it's not the purpose of those. So also we don't need to test, for instance, getter, setter, or maybe for each loop of arrays. It's not necessary. It was already tested before us. We don't need to spend our time on this. So what should be tested? Business logic is the first place. It's very important because if someone breaks something, we should be able to find out what was broken exactly as soon as possible. Single component and everything that contains condition and can bring different output on this condition. Also, we have integration tests, and when we test in several modules together, if we come back to the example with the calculator, it may be if we want to test, for instance, multiply and add functions together, do they work okay? If we for instance try to do something like 2 multiply 3 add 4, and it's outputs the right answer. So we want to make sure that our function together work correctly. And also we have just a second, please. End-to-end tests or functional tests. It's a kind of test that we use to test our function entirely or our system entirely. For instance, again with the calculator, if we want to be sure that if we hit some buttons and then we hit equality sign, it's gonna get us an output. So the whole floor of the execution of the path that user comes from the one point to the starting working with our software, and was he satisfied in the end point of execution of his function. So also we have a pattern. As long as unit tests are testing small units, they have benefits. Some benefits. They are faster to run because we don't need to set up a lot, or we just run in simple function or creating simple components. Also, it's types of tests that should be introduced in our application as maximum quantity. Then we have integrational tests, trying to test our module together. They are all usually more expensive and time consuming. And in the end, it's a user interface tests or functional tests, and also under this category is manual testing performed by QA engineers. Sometimes we have anti-pattern on the projects. For instance, the project I'm working currently on, we don't have any unit tests whatsoever because the customer wants everything as soon as possible and don't have enough time to write tests. And sometimes it's because really challenging because everyone is changing business logic and different places. The team is very big, and I sure that if we had unit tests, it's might be way better for developers to live and sleep well in the night. So, so unit tests, again, if we have right pattern implemented on the project, unit tests all cheaper, the most cheapest and the fastest, vice versa. User UI tests or manual testing is more expensive and takes more time to perform. As someone already mentioned, we have test-driven development. Guys, do you familiar with the concept of TDD and BDD? Someone except the person who wrote? Yes, both. No. Okay, so we will talk a little bit about it. We won't touch on BDD because it's not really relevant to the subject. I will share the slides, and if someone is interested at this very point, you might want to read it on yourself, but exactly the one we're going to talk about today is test-driven development. What exactly is this? And when we write tests before we write our code, and in the process of implementing our tests, we write tests, then we write minimal code, and then refactor it until it's not becomes perfect in our vision. So it's supposed to help us with the quality of the code. So we again, as we started and discussed the benefits of have unit tests on the project. I talk about the code quality. When we write code with testing in mind, we might want to use more pure functions, for instance. They easier to test, not use some mutable or mutable code, some mutate our data and so on. So well, this is the life cycle of TDD. So we start, we write a test, when then we it falls. If we don't write any code, then we write minimal code to pass the test, and then we factor the written code until it's not pass all the tests and or not satisfy our not satisfy us with the quality. BTD is it's a bit different. I'm not sure that we it's behavioral driven development, but it's not relevant to this to the unit testing. So as I was saying, as who is want to read about the things, they will explore the subject on their own. So so I would like to show you. There's a link I can share with you. Someone. Just a second. I will open my. No. I would like to show you in just a second. This is basically how any testing libraries works in a nutshell, under the hood, what do they implement in really primitive way, and how does it work? But at the first place, I would like to ask a question, guys. Have you ever someone ever wrote unit tests, or maybe are familiar with libraries, testing libraries? Just someone is really ahead of maybe even me. Okay. Like, so nice. In our course, we are going to use Jest framework, JavaScript. So I'm gonna show you. So for example, we have a function. Yes, this function is helps us to figure out whether the number passed to this function are prime or not. So we want to make sure that our function works exactly the way we want it to work. So it identifies the numbers correctly. So it's our testing file. I imported here this function. How I can how what should I hit to make it bigger? Does someone know? No. Just a moment, please. Sorry, guys. Thank you. Yes. Oh, is this okay? So I'm sorry. Sorry again. So I implemented here a function assert. What does it do? It has we pass to this function actual, expected, and we also want to pass to this function message. We want to see if something goes wrong. So what exactly we're doing? We just comparing, does actual or equals expected or not, and if it doesn't, it throws an error. So of course we won't be using this logic in a real application because just simple comparison are not enough to satisfy test to create a test library, but it's good enough for our example. So I exported this function to the file, and as you can see, we just call assert our object and equal method on this, and just pass the return value of this function, and after we just pass what we expect this to be. So 3 is a prime number, and 11 also 12 not. So now we're going to check whether or not our function is working correctly. So as you can see, we don't have any output over there, so everything was fine. If I will try to pass, for instance, false and run this code again, so it throws an error. 11 is a prime number, and if we pass false here, so it will show an error. For instance, if I change something, for instance, like this in this one, return here true. The very beginning, the tests are failing. 3 function does not perform her function it was written for, so we can easily find where exactly something went wrong. For instance, if some developers come to your code and starts to change equal signs, or maybe some variables, or commenting your business logic and functionality, so you can just when the unit test runs, you can show person when exactly he broke your code. Guys, does someone familiar with CI/CD concept now? Oh, it's a secret. It's font. You can. I don't remember exactly which one. I'll find. But it's font for triple signed. It's not only triple signed. It's a good. So again, familiar with CI/CD concept? Anyone? The person who knows everything, maybe. Yeah, the definition. So when we have continuous integration on our project, we delivering code, continuous delivery or continuous integration is not, not really important in the subject of our lecture, but when a lot of developers work on the same code base, we are making a lot of changes in different parts of the project. And again, if someone have changed your code and logic to have broken, if we have unit tests set up, for instance, as a pre-commit, or we cannot merge our changes to the master branch before every before all the checks were passed, and one of the important checks is the unit testing. So it helps us to um, deploy or merge bug prone code in a master. That's what unit tests can be really useful. So, is everything clear on this example, guys? I think it's very simple, very basic, just in a nutshell. So we have some function. Can you delete failing tests? Or we can do not write tests, so they won't fail. Yes, of course, sometimes people, not very good people, is listening to test. Why exactly? As a Java is better, or is difficultier to test? I have never worked with Java, so to be honest, I'm not familiar. JS can be pretty tricky to test too, especially uh, the type conversions. And so everything clear, right? So guys, just a second, please. If someone was working with Node.js, they have Assert in Node.js. It's something. It's not designed to a unit test to test some functionality, but it has similar. It has similar functionality. Just a second, guys. Can I open my comments? So theoretically, this model can be used for writing tests, but not kind of like seriously. It's way better to use specially designed libraries. First, as you can see, it's very first snippet. We have our assert imported from assert, and we pass to this function I'm sorry. It's too late indeed, and I just cannot remember the right words. I'm sorry, guys. Just please give me a moment. We compare here we perform comparison operation, which checks whether variable is greater than a variable b or not. If, as you can see, it's not true, and we have an assertion error. I have never worked with Node.js, and I cannot tell you exactly how often can be assert used in a production code. But if you sometimes need to assert something, you definitely can use this one, but not for writing unit tests, because again, as I was saying, the assert is not a framework. It's not designed to write unit tests. So on the second snippet, we perform strict comparison between two comparison operation and check on whether the sum of three numbers is equal to the expected output or not. So we have our function, and we again really uh, almost the same functionality as I was showing just a couple of minutes before. We have assert, we pass some comparison, and we have an assertion error if something goes wrong, or nothing if everything is okay. So Jest is testing framework, JavaScript testing framework. So what exactly we have in Jest, as in my example, as I showed you, we don't have a lot of logging going on here. We just have an error and nothing else. So sometimes we would like to more detailed description of what exactly went wrong. So I also have an example how we can implement more descriptive function for testing. For instance, as you can see, I implemented here just an object. It has two properties, two functions. I'm going to import it to my main file. So as you can see, we use describe, we pass a function here and the message. So when we run our test, we can see exactly where is the problem. It's logs us what test exactly success at which one for what did fall. 3 yes. No. Sorry. So Jesus Christ. I didn't commit my changes. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. What does it fail? Does anyone see? So just return to. if we have everything right, we have a pretty nice looking log when what exactly we tested, and if everything is okay, if I change something, for instance, again, if I change my function, it's fail everything, and we will find out exactly where the error drops first time. So our my very first function does not succeed, does not match the expectation, doesn't match expected input. So the very first test fail, and I can try to refactor my code or refactor my tests. It depends on your goal. So moving on to the Jest framework, we have two main instances. I don't know how to name it. Uh, in Jest we have expect. We will usually uh, pass to the expect what we want to test, and it will return us an object. As you can see, it's original code of the library. So we have our matchers. Matchers is functions that are perform comparison. So for instance, we have to be. We uh, pass to we pass their our expected output of the function or anything we want to test, and I'm sorry, just a minute. So we have expect a function again, please. I'm just tired, sorry guys. So we have expect function. We pass value and it returns an object, expectation object, and on this expectation object we can call all those matchers. If you will go to the link, you will find them, and it's real different depending on what exactly your goals, what exactly you're trying to compare with your tests, and we in a nutshell, it's that we have function. Just I will show you an example. Just a second, please, because what I did exactly in this branch, I installed Jest as a dependency, and then I just used Jest to test my, again, familiar favorite function is prime. As you can see, it's very better looking. So I have expect. I pass to the expected function with the parameter with number I want to test, and then to the function to be, I will pass an expected output, and the framework does everything for me. So if I will fire unit test in this directory, I will So I have one test, and I'm testing my is prime function, and as you can see, it's my my test is passed. So the number 14 isn't prime. So again, if I will change and do the same, oh, others, sorry. Shoot. Okay. Mm. If I change code and if I would change code and break it, so as you can see, my tests are failing, and it's have a really way more nice output than I have previously. It shows exactly the place where everything has failed, and it's really nice to use. So I would like to go over matchers now. The just library have a lot of them. This really a big number. If you go to the documentation, you can find. So as you can see, there is a lot of matchers represented. We are going to go through the most common. I think those are going to be enough for your task, right? Did you already get a task on our unit testing? No, guys? Yes. It's, I'm pretty sure that also I would like to say that they have really great documentation. What you're supposed to do in the unit tests task. You, if I'm not mistaken, you should cover your previously written code with unit tests, right? No? Am I missing something? No? Just can I take a look? Because I remember from the previous. Mm, thank you. Custom dash. Have you finished custom dash task now? You should use just. Should follow TDD. It's 80%. Mm, that's a good question. I was sure that you have done. No, I schedule. Just can give me a moment, please. I'll look over the schedule. Schedule. Cancel. Is it okay? Hmm. I think you you have to. You will be forced to implement also the functionality, because what you're going to test if you don't have any functionality. Should write the function and then test it, or do I get some smoke? I think yes. I might be. I might check with just a second, please, guys. And, If you will wait, let's continue our lecture, and I'll write to the manager, and she might be, if she will be available, I think she might clarify what is going on. Just a second, please. Okay, what exactly are we clear on this, or should I still ask the manager about this task? Okay, I asked. So let's start with our matcher functions. As the very first one we're going to take a look at is to be. It's basic. To be is used to compare primitive values or to check referential identity of object instances. And it's not recommended to use it for floating point numbers. As you know, those are in JavaScript can be pretty tricky, so we don't use to be for them. For instance, if we have our object and we try to compare it with another object, so as you can see, our tests are going to fail because the links are different. The object is different, and the objects are different. And so our test failed. If we, for instance, use a different matcher, it's to equal. We should use this matcher to compare recursively all properties of object instances. It's like maybe you familiar with deep equality when all our properties of the object are matching, and it's also uses object is to compare primitives. So it's if we will run this test, in this case it's going to be true. So we shouldn't compare our object if we don't not interested in the same link or just need to have the same property. Also, we have compare anything with this, like 5 is equal to 5 is gonna be okay. No. So it's two basic structures. It's to be and to equal. But also we have a lot of matchers that helps us to identify truthiness of the compared values. For instance, the very first one is to be null is the same as to be, and if we pass null to it, but it's consider to be more readable and have a better message. For instance, it's just more readable. We look at our code, we don't have to go through it really carefully. Just see it to be null and save our time. So next one is to be undefined, and you could write expect again, and then to be matcher to be and pass undefined in here, but it's better to read. It's looking better. Well, and also it's not good, consider not good to refer to the undefined in a code. So we have our so as you can see, we just declare a variable and do not uh, assign anything to it, and we can find out whether this variable are undefined. This, did we assign anything to this variable or not? So next one is we want to check for define whether the again variable define is an opposite. Just so it's not important for this function whether the value is falsy or truthy. It's just finds out whether it's defined or not. So guys, I want to ask you, maybe you remember what are 6 values are false in JavaScript except from false? No, not except it is false. Can you write? Yes, okay. What else? Okay, thank you. Yes, none is also. Just to refresh your memory, because it's a very common question on any interview. What are the false? No, is this false? Is the empty massive array is false? I'm sorry. Excuse me, please. Is empty project false? No, it's not. Uh, empty arrays and empty object are still true. Empty string, yes, it might be false if we compare with, for instance, non-strict equality. But empty array and empty object is always gonna be true. So the next measure we're going to look through, it's to be truthy. If we want to find out whether or value that are passed to the matcher are truthy, not it's not supposed to be number or something, but it cannot be again. If we want to test for null, it should fail. Yes, because null is not truthy, as you said correctly in the chat. So our tests are going to fail. So the next matcher is the opposite, is to be falsy, and we should use this matcher when we don't care what the value is, and you just want to make sure that value is false in the Boolean context again. So as you said, those values are not only false in JavaScript, might be false. So if you want to test whether the value is not true, so we can use not sure. So this should be okay now. Yes, it passed. So we also have matchers for that we can use with arrays. For instance, I have an array here, and we wanted to find out whether or not it contains some particular uh, this value in this array. So we are going to test for existing value and something that we don't have in our array. So it's failed. So the very first matcher is return true. The tests are succeeded, and when we try to find in an array an existing element, it returns us it throws an error. So we can find whether we are trying to access existing or not existing, for instance, number of the array. Also, we have some matchers that work with numbers. It's very convenient. It's to be greater than. It's we can pass number or big int in there to this function, and you, we should use to be greater than to compare received and expected for numbers or big integer values, as I said. For example, as we can see, we have our sum here, and we wanted to test whether or not it's greater than 3. Also, again, as I said at the very beginning, it might be tricky with floating numbers. So for floating numbers, we will get to it a couple of minutes later. So we will run our tests. My one test passed. Yes, one test passed. So we have all our matches to meet the expectation. It's to be greater than or equal to is greater than 3, or so 3 and point half, and we don't have an arrow thrown over there. So we also have to be less than. I think it's pretty straightforward. They have names speaking for themselves, or to be less than or equal to some value. What when it comes to floating points, as you can see, if who knows? I think everyone knows that JavaScript it's not gonna be on 0.3. It's gonna be some way. Right. Let's run it. It's gonna be 0.3, lots of zeros and 4. So we cannot really use our standard to be equality matchers for those calculations. So we want to use designed for matchers specially designed for those cases is to be close to. Also, what I forgot to mention that all those, if we wanted to compare our numbers for the strict value, we want for this to be 4, and we don't want to greater than or less than, we just want to exact values. Just we can use or to be or to equal, and it's going to work just fine. So is everything, I think it's really easy topic, guys. So just going to one more example, and I think we can finish. And if you have any question, please ask. And they have great documentation also. So I just showing you what you can just go through pretty easily by yourself. My opinion. Is everything okay? Or you're sleeping? Okay. No, it's not really. It's not testing. It's really simple. You just have, for instance, your Lodash task, right? You just want your function returns the same output. You just go through the documentation. It's straightforward. And if you are testing, you won't be testing synchronous code or maybe difficult components. When you start to use React, for instance, or Angular framework, I'm pretty sure that you have React, yes, scheduled lectures on React and Angular. Yes, so it's a bit different because it implies Angular. I worked with Angular, so I don't have a good understanding what exactly they test in React, but in Angular it's more interaction with Vue. It has way more dependency injection patterns, so we should test mock servers and so on. When you're just going to test custom Lodash, it's just functions, and you have to make sure that your output matches uh, desired. So I'm sure you're gonna be fine. It's not difficult. Just like a small puzzle for your joy. So, the very last example, and we all are going to go and I don't know what you guys do after the lectures. I'm gonna eat ice cream. Um, So here I wrote some small example. It's we have character. Yes, it has some health, mana. Have you played online games, guys? Does someone enjoy gaming? So we are going to. It's not really a good, well written code, so I ask your not to judge me, but it works and it's everything we need. Don't do this. Trolls, yeah, although for all, it's serious. So we have our character class and we want to test whether or not it's work nice and the way we want it to work. We have a couple of spells we can cast. It's some mage, I think, if we had spells, frost fire, and we can get into fight and we can get harassed, and we want to have a reset button if we wanted to start over yet again. So I'm sorry. So we have in Jest setup if we want to, for instance, before every we have test function, and if you want before every test something to happen, for instance, I would like to create reset all the values of health and mana after every test run. So I wrote here a reset after each test. It's going to do a reset for it's going to be more convenient for me to test my class before, because it's not affected by any other function or method calls. So it's also have before each. We can easily change before each, and it's just going to perform this functionality before each call of test function. Why would we do this? For instance, is just image, but sometimes we wanted to blah, blah, blah. We want to initialize our mocks, for instance, if we have some functionality and we want to pass an objects before fresh object before every test, so we can do initialization here or maybe cleanups and so on. So as you can see, in before each or after each I do a reset, and before all I create a new character, so it's just initializing in a way. Also, after all, if I would need to, for instance, I don't know, clean up something, some subscription or anything, I would do it, or destroy some instances, I would do it in after all function. So as you can see, what I did here, so initializing before each test run, I do reset. For instance, I wanted to check how much, whether or not my character will be able to survive with some mana through 3 spell casts. So I just took my object. I called a method I need to test, and after that I just get the value and try to compare it whether or not it's going to be more than 30, or my character is going to run out of mana after just casting 3 spells. So also I was going to test character resistance, how much, so if I gonna hit my character a couple of times, whether or not status of the character is updated, because if I have my champion to be low on health, it's supposed to be in a death status, and I would like to check whether or not my function works correctly. So as you can see, my tests are just everything passed, and my function to work as I expected. For instance, if I pass here, which is straightforward, it's going to throw an error, and I'll go to, if my code was wrong, I will, Jesus, sorry. I would go to my code and just fix it. So guys, I have an idea. Do you wanna home? Not home, home. I will give you a link to this branch, and we together write a couple of those tests. I want an ideas from you. You have already matchers, and we will write a couple of matchers, and we will everyone just all go home or go to work or something. Walk. Okay? Is it okay? Do you have time? Do you have motivation? Someone without baby, or you can join us any time. Okay, I have what we together are going to. But, Are we going to test? Oh, congratulations. And you have time to study programming? So guys, what else can we test? You just guys, you just awesome. I can't imagine doing those things once at a time. You're awesome. So also I checked out on a task and the manager told then you are as you saw you received customer dash task, right, and tests. So we discussed today and some of you already familiar with the concept of TDD. Just a second, I've finished talking about your task and then we come back to the example. We should do it, you should do TDD. So you write tests as the first place and then you'll go back and write functionality. I have never worked on a project with TDD. You have an opportunity to try it out, guys. It's cool. So everything on the same page with me. So you have write tests first, then customer dash task implementation after that. I delivered information, so so coming back, for instance, what can we test? For instance, sorry for my instances. I want to test whether or not my person can cast first Nova spell for 10 seconds. We are going to create on the fly. This is simple. We're just trying to use different matchers to just get an idea how it's in a nutshell supposed to work. We wanted to so I'm gonna take my character, fires method, inverse method for 10 seconds. It implemented, so we pass to this method time, and we it fires, and then we want to we will pass again character. It's really simple. Greater than, for instance, we can use to be or equal. For instance, we wanted to make sure that to be less or to be greater than or equal to our no, not our, just now. No, it's now it's too small value. For instance, I want to find out whether or not after the 10 seconds of casting one spell, will I be able to fire one more, for instance, Frost Bolt. So then I execute. my tests. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Is this okay now? So as you can see, my tests are failed because if I'm going to cast this spell for 10 seconds, I'm going to be completely out of mana. So, I can find out whether the values I pass to the my constructor are going to satisfy my appetite for mana on this character. For instance, I can maybe pass bigger value or not pass on those exact values, the exact numbers, and not go out of mana after casting some spells. So, any ideas? What else can we test? Not a lot of, just simple. Health. Health after food, reset function. We can, of course. How are we going to do this? That's a good idea. I like it. Yeah. What exactly we're going to do this? How exactly we're going to do this, guys? Sorry, my English is not good. We're not talk a lot about it or speaking in English in Belarus here, you know. Fortunately. Okay, if we'll fail below 0, yes, we can. Did you mean get harassed function? It will fail below 0. I kinda did it. We can do the opposite, for instance. We can check whether or not our character is going to be alive after, for instance, to get harassed by 30. Expect health to be initial health. Okay, expect health. For instance, we might want to do this with reset. We might want to sorry, guys. We want to perform some tasks. For instance, we want to cast some spell, get harassed, yes, and then we want to make sure that our mana level and health level have changed, and then we can call reset, and after the reset, we're going to again call expect. So we make sure that we have different, so we have some action done, because if we are going to file reset just here like this, just if we're gonna to call character reset, right, just from the start, it's kind of like there's no action. We have our 100 and still going to be 100 for us. So we're gonna do yes, and we it's want to make sure. So expect to be 50. Make sure the now level the image object is the one that has been reset. Can we compare? We kind of before we create our character before all. Once maybe I didn't get the question. Can we compare image object with the one that we reset? Reset function. Yes, we can. Yes, we can just created on fly, yes? Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. You mean here we wanted to... No, we can. Let's okay. Move. Nano. Just a second. Equal to, yeah, creativity. Just a second, guys. Let's use my to equal. Just to mix things up. Let's not get bored, you know. No. Fireball is gonna be 85. So we're gonna do some check. No. What is that? Test. Just a moment, please. Please do. What? What is this? No. It's... Oh, yeah. You mean, I mean that after set it would be the same as... Yes, I get what you have in mind. So I'm going to honest... so do... We're gonna do expect... What kind of match are we going to use here? I told you guys, it's beginning. What exactly we're going to use to not to comparison between properties, not links. To be is exactly... No, not to be. To be, we're gonna do, if we are going to use to be, it's gonna to compare it by links. For instance, if we have... just a second. If we have to be, it's gonna to return false because it's two different objects, and I'm going to compare them. Two different links gonna be tests are going to fail, and in this case we have to equal is going to make a deep comparison, so it's going to compare properties, not links. So we're gonna use to equal. Maybe I a little confused you with using it here, but do... Oh my. Why does it fail at exactly twice the same string to equal? Just a second, please. Okay. Я уже путаюсь. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe my reset does not work correctly. Interesting. Okay. I'm gonna do console log driven development. Maybe it should. Should pass, yes. We might be missing something. Expect this. Exhibit quality. In case of, it's interesting, you know, I cannot just get it from top of my head, but I'm gonna I'm gonna sit it if we, for instance, character. Okay. It should not refer to the same object because it's two different ones. Oh, interesting. It works just fine with simple object. It just doesn't want to work with. Maybe something with the methods. Okay, guys. So as we find out, it doesn't work with object with message. I don't know. It's some. I need to check out documentation. What exactly is working here? So as you can see, it's probably something if we use functions as a property, so it's gonna fail. So just it's okay as it is. We um checked out whether or not the after that our health is equals to the initial health of the character we want to have. So what are we gonna go for this for the second one, or are we going to finish? There's someone up for the one more test. Scream. Scream, yes. Dreams. So okay, let's have just one last one, and we are going to go sleep, guys. What else can we test? Ice cream testing. Oh, test ice cream. Status. After which events. We're gonna check our status on what we're gonna check it. Not exactly a lot of stuff to check. Okay, that's what you can just. Oh, thank you. Just you you just easily can Spotify the person who have already worked in a development. Just Google. it's good. Common. You can see experienced person from the first glance. We'll try out. Doesn't want to. Somewhere. It might be something with. Doesn't work. I'm pretty sure there's a solution. You just need to research. I'm pretty sure we're not the first people who face this problem. So test we're going to test is status alive after what did you do after just from the beginning, right? We're gonna test if we have friends now creation. Now just oh, you know, we can all we can find bug, I think now. I haven't reset status, so if we kill our persons to be live, I think the test is going to fail. It's a good idea. We already saving our time and cost of development just with two tests, just already happening. So we have expect just from the beginning. Think is character status to be. It should fail. Just. Oh, that's why does it? Just. It's not supposed to be live. Why is that? Before all, before each. Maybe it resets. Maybe it shouldn't. Does reset. Okay, reset. Supposed to do it only one time. To be honest, I did not work with Jest in production. It's before all, yes. Why does it have live status? Maybe because I know why it has, because if we do this, it's gonna fail. Yes, because it's pretty, this game, this class, is not some kind of like good code. So as you can see, I just assign here alive. If I should do something little different. If health, yeah, I should just assign that and not touch live. Correctly. And in a reset function, it should be a resetting of the status. So it's gonna be work. So, did you get, guys, what exactly was wrong with my code and why does our test did not fail? Because my code was with a bug, so our value was reassigned to the live again, and so yes, so now it should work just fine. This I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it's supposed to work correctly. Jesus. What do you want from me to be? It's not. It's okay. This and so before each invoke, yes, it works with every test before all once, and then before every test we have this. Yes, he can just some zombie. I don't know. So guys, it's everything I have for today. I recommend you to go through the documentation by yourself. It's written really nicely. It's interesting to read. Kind of like you have some goals, you have your task, and you just check out measures. For instance, there's a lot of those, and just go through them and like choose the one that suits your goals better. And they have really well described everything, just easily written and with examples and so on. Yes, it's called for generating HTML. Typically with DOM, for instance, I haven't seen this in again in production code because, for instance, Angular that have the functionality like generating code with HTML code with JavaScript, they have special modules for this kind of functionality. They have instances that helps to create all the isolated DOM. You can try to test if you just for yourself you wanted to cover with test your the application you written in during this course, right? Sebastian. I In real life situation, you're not going to work, with your bare hands with generating HTMLs with JavaScript because there no one writes but it's no with your hands. But when you are going to work, for instance, with Angular or React, they have special modules designed to test your view and but with your bare hands, I hope you will never do this. So, if you don't have any question, guys, so I think we can go and do whatever we wanted to do. If you don't have any questions, links, you have links. The video going to be uploaded, but I pretty sure that everyone who was here, I don't have any questions. So nice, guys. Have a nice night. Good night. Thank you. Bye.